41. Collapse. Knox stirred at Maven's voice. She helped him back to the corner, and together they slumped against the wall, breathing heavily at the simple exertion. If possible, Maven looked to be in worse shape than he was. Her dark skin couldn't hide the deep bruises mottling her face, misshapen and swollen. Her lips were split, and dried blood cracked as a smile lifted her mouth. "I'm so glad you're alive." Her relief in the statement twisted at his heart. She tried to focus on his face, but he could see the effort it took. He sidled closer to her. "Lie still." "What have they done to you?" she asked. "No more than they have to you," he deflected. She tried to speak, but a wet cough interrupted her efforts. She collapsed back, trying to catch her breath, flecks of fresh blood coloring her lips. Ignoring his own pain, Knox pushed himself up to sitting. "Lift your head," he instructed. He gathered some rags from the floor for her to lean against. The manacles activated at the exertion, and light flashed through his vision as he gritted his teeth. The taste of blood filled his mouth, and his body twitched under the current. The manacles went dead, and he sucked in a desperate breath, fighting to clear his head. "Oh, Sky," Maven gasped. Tears welled as she gripped his arm. "Were you shocked?" he groaned. She ignored his question. "This is how they are controlling you." It was a statement that needed no response. He carefully propped himself back against the wall, making sure he didn't pull on his strength. Maven slumped back next to him as another cough rolled through her. Her breathing didn't sound right. "I'm sorry, Maven. I should have expected the commander to follow me to Rickon." She blew a raspberry through swollen lips. "None of this is on you." She hesitated. "Kip?" "She's safe. For now." He hoped with every fiber of his being it was true. He didn't voice his fears. Maven sighed heavily, her breath rattling. "Sky, look after our sweet child," she said, pausing between words to catch her breath. "You need to hear something. You are connected to the sky." Another cough shook her, and she gasped for breath. Her lungs rattled and wheezed. Knox tried to swallow past the lump in his throat, but he couldn't dislodge it. He was helpless in the face of her suffering, and that was more unbearable than electricity coursing through him. He shushed her. "It's okay. Rest. I know." Her voice took on a desperate tone as she fought for each breath. "No, you don't." He frowned, confused. "The sky has no bounds. She cannot be emptied, cannot be drained. You are one with her." The only sound was her labored breathing. "They cannot take you from her." Is she delirious? He'd never heard her talk of the sky in such a way. He understood his bond to the sky. His every moment as an overseer had taught him to harness and understand the gift shared with him. "Cannot be drained," her words echoed. "Cannot be emptied. Isn't that what's happening, though?" It was as if every time he had to heal himself there was less to pull from. The slow draining of his gift, a door being incrementally closed on his connection. When he'd laid aside his vows, his power had been taken, but his connection to the sky always remained. Whatever the Tumultians were doing felt like they were slowly flaying both the strength and the bond from his very soul. "I don't know how," he finally whispered. The admission spilled from him with cold certainty. "But they are slowly tearing me from the sky. I don't know how much longer I can hold on." Maven didn't answer. As he listened to each of her reluctant breaths, he drifted into his own fitful sleep. When she spoke, it jarred him awake. "You don't need to hold her. She is holding you." Heartbeats passed. "Holding us." Maven slumped back against him, unconscious. Nox spent the next hours counting her breaths. Each rise and fall infused him with courage. Here, in the dark, beaten and alone, she was fighting. She'd found courage, and he must do the same. He awoke to rough hands pulling him up and away from Maven. He struggled until the manacles released several courses of energy, leaving his world spinning. His guards wore thick leather gloves this time, keeping them from sharing his torment. As he was dragged away, he strained to catch sight of Maven's huddled form in the corner. Her chest rose and fell in rhythm. The door closed. "Get your legs under," a guard ordered in butchered Mercurian. Nox obediently tried to marshal his limbs through the fog. Every movement felt as if he were fighting through thick sludge. A sharp kick to his knee sent him reeling sideways. His rubbered legs refused to work. It must have looked like as much a losing battle as it felt, and after a few more kicks, his guards hauled him a little higher and let him drag between them. They took him towards a central room, separated from the rest of the space by tall screens and a thick curtain. Before the entrance, 2 others lay gagged on the floor, wearing manacles hand and foot. Their bodies twitched, helpless against the energy coursing through them. Nox felt a dull pang of sympathy for the wretches. He avoided the tiny flicker of heat hiding behind his sternum. If he tried to draw it out, there would only be more pain. His head lolled forward and pulled awkwardly on his neck, but there was no strength left to right it. "As you see, our occupation is complete," the commander announced as he was dragged through the curtain. Nox flinched at the sound of her voice. Sweat-drenched hair hung down and hid his eyes. The guards released him to his own power. His ankles rolled and his knees buckled. Knives of pain lanced up his legs, and he crumpled unceremoniously at the commander's feet. "For the Earth," the commander said, with surprising passion in her voice. A soft gasp sounded from the other side of the room, along with a few growled curses. The voices were impossibly familiar. "It can't be." More hallucinations, no doubt. He flared the heat from his chest in a desperate bid to rid himself of the phantoms. The manacles activated, sending quick spikes down his spine and drawing out a growl through gritted teeth. "Enough," an achingly familiar voice spoke. "Tormenting some poor soul is not going to improve our terms." "Terran?" His heart picked up its pace. The cool, soft tones of an older woman joined him. "He's correct. We either deal in good faith, or we commit to this war you are obviously spoiling for." The woman's voice turned icy. "And you should know, to do so would be inviting a massacre. If you drive us to war, there will be no mercy." The commander's scathing laugh filled the space, silencing the voices. It reverberated with a glee that turned Nox's stomach. "Good faith? The order? A deal was brokered. A piece of the earth for land that would feed our people and not give way beneath our feet. Take a good look, Elder. The man before you is our accusation, your spy." A scream cut through the air, and Nox's heart stopped, not with fear, but with a spark of life surging through him. "Emilia!" He forced himself to open swollen eyelids. She stood across the room with Terran's arm wrapped around her waist, holding her back. Stop, what is it?" "It's him! Terran, it's Nox!" Terran released her in shock, and she rushed forward. Time slowed as several things happened at once, not the least of which was the commander squeezing the metal orb in her hand, activating his manacles again. This time, they did not stop. Nox felt himself slip within his body as if he had come loose and no longer fit this shell. If he thought of it, he could trace the energy moving through him in painful clarity, but he could also sidestep the sensation. Here, in this loose state, he could stand apart and see his body writhing in pain. he could also take in the entirety of the room at once. 2 guards flanked Terran, Emilia, and a white-haired woman. She had to be the other voice he heard. Both guards lunged forward to intercept Emilia in her rush to his side, and met Terran's wrath instead. His friend grabbed one of the Tumulcian soldiers from behind, gripping his head, and in a fluid motion broke the man's neck. Terran stepped over the first body, eyes on the guard who had pinned Emilia's arms behind her back and was keeping her from dropping next to him. Terran was always lethal, but something was off with the way he moved. This should have been child's play. He's too slow. The peculiar nature of his mind in this state noted a small ember of light within Terran's chest. Knox frowned and looked down at his own breaking body. He, too, had a similar phenomenon, albeit smaller and flickering as if it were a flame being smothered. No one else in the room carried the internal glow, but on the other side of the wall he could see 2 flickering globes similar to his own. Through the wall? I can see through a wall? All at once, clarity struck, like a fresh wind clearing out the fog he had been living in. He was dying. These were his last moments. He looked at Emilia, beauty amongst chaos. Even with her face contorted by grief and shock, she remained the woman he loved. Terran reached the guard holding her, dislocated the man's arm before placing a surgical front kick to the man's hip, sending him to the floor screaming in pain. 2 more guards swept through the curtained door. Emilia's hair was a wild explosion of curls, but for the wisps sticking to the tears on her cheeks. Feral grief focused its fury on the commander, her eyes fixated on the controls she still held in her hand. She flung herself at the Tumulcian leader. The well-trained woman easily sidestepped the attack and landed an elbow into the side of Emilia's head. Emilia crumpled and lay still. Quinmark cackled as she crashed to the hard ground. No! The white-haired woman, Elder Venier, he placed a name to the face, moved toward him with her hands raised. Terran returned with politicians? This man wasn't sent to you, she said softly. He's not a spy. Lies, hissed the commander. And Overseer Nylin, the child? Are you going to tell me they weren't all a ploy to steal from us? Venier's mouth twitched, eyes widening in surprise. He wouldn't, she breathed, clearly disturbed, but she continued to edge closer to his body. I knew it, the commander crowed. Arrogant fools! The Order never intended on honoring their bond. This exchange could have cost you a few clusters at the border's edge, but now we will take it all. Venier bent and picked up something from the ground in a quick movement. A small oval of metal. The control switch. The commander must have dropped it, avoiding Emilia's tackle. Venier glanced down at him and switched off the device. His body continued to twitch, but the larger convulsions stilled. With a deliberate move, she dropped the switch and crushed it under her boot. I can speak for the Order. We can open discussions over land. This war does not need to continue. You're right. It doesn't, the commander agreed, voice eerily calm despite the chaos of the room. Venier pulled her shoulders back, ever the diplomat, voice tight. You have impressive technology. Perhaps we can broker a trade if you can agree preserving mercurial lives is the priority. She avoided looking towards Knox as she swallowed. Quinmark scoffed. The deal has already been made and broken. We were promised our own piece of the sky. Not possible. The sky is not for a dirt-clodden people like yours, Venier said, raising her voice. Look around you, Elder, as if we need your feeble god any longer. Your people are helpless. The commander raised a hand to her mouth and whistled. 2 more soldiers entered. They glanced at Terran grappling with the last sentry, but jogged past them to stand before their leader with a wave of her hand. I am done with her. Venier's eyes went wide. If you make a move against me, my overseers will destroy this entire camp. None remain to answer your call. Take a good look at your spy, Elder. His fate will be yours. The guards moved to seize Venier, but with a smooth motion she pulled a narrow dagger from beneath her setka and drove it into the first guard's throat, pulling it free in a spray of blood. Shocked, the second stumbled back, reaching for his bolt thrower, but Venier didn't wait, closing the space and pushing the blade under his chest plate. "Those of the sky are never helpless," Venier hissed at the soldier, and then went rigid, her face contorted in pain and shock. The commander, not fooled, had used the distraction the guards provided and had come up behind the elder, dagger in hand. She pulled Venier close and snarled, "Your people's blood will water the earth as your god watches, impotent to act." With a sharp twist, the blade embedded in Venier's back pierced her heart, and she dropped. "No!" Venier met Knox's gaze, gasping for breath. The light faded from her eyes a moment before she went still. Terran landed the killing blow on the guard he fought and spun, taking in the scene with a look of horror. His golden eyes tracked across the room to where Emilia lay, and he shouted her name. Knox's focus transfixed on Emilia. "Wake up, sweetheart. You can do it." Emilia stirred and groaned, reaching her hand to her head. She shot the commander a murderous glare and gathered herself to stand. A new group of soldiers pushed through the curtain, no doubt hearing the commotion, and charged Terran. He turned with his sluggish movements and faced the group, keeping them from Emilia. With a casual motion, the commander wiped the blood from her blade across the dark fabric of her fitted pants, and then flipped it in her hand with lethal purpose. She fixed her blue eyes on Emilia and pointedly looked in Knox's direction. "Who is this overseer to you that makes you so reckless, little skyling?" "He's mine." Emilia's voice cracked as she dusted off her hands and looked towards him. Knox's heart squeezed, and he felt a pull back to his body. Those words were all he wanted to hear for eternity. He looked at the Timoshian woman. Her eyes danced with delight at Emilia's confession, and her mouth twisted in an odd smile. Helplessness seared through him sharper than any agony endured thus far. "I thought that one was your bonded." She looked over to where Terran was encircled by a group of guards. They were taking turns testing his defenses, slowly tightening their circle. Emilia's jaw flexed. "It's complicated." She lifted her fists to a fighting posture, and Knox struggled to speak. "Run, Emilia!" The pull back to his body tugged again, this time with an accompanying shock of pain. The commander narrowed her eyes with a wicked gleam. "This is going to be a rather devastating day for you, then." She turned towards Terran with exaggerated purpose and flipped the knife in her hand to hold it by the blade. In a smooth motion, she flung the knife across the room, and it struck Terran in his gut. He grunted mid-swing and stumbled back from his opponent, looking stunned. The knife was buried under his ribs up to the bolster. He pulled it free in a moment of shock, a crimson stain blooming on his shirt. Emilia growled, a fierce expression fixing itself on her face. Commander Quinmark reached around to her hip and pulled another weapon loose. She lifted it, and Emilia's face went pale. His club, impression. The heavy, twisted piece of wood from the tumult, reinforced and refined by Emilia's father, was now raised against his wife. Knox's consciousness re-inhabited his body in an instant. In the same breath, damaged tissue and pain-fired nerves entombed him. Blackness threatened, clawing at the edges of his vision, his senses overwhelmed. "No!" Quinmark stalked toward Emilia. Emilia may have sparred with him and Terran on occasion, but Knox knew there was no way she could hold her own against this woman. She scrambled back, found a long pole dropped by one of the guards, and held it out in front of her. The mirth left the commander's expression, replaced with menace as the two women circled one another. Knox searched for the heat hidden at his core. A dim spark twinkled its warmth. Maven's words echoed. "The sky has no bounds, cannot be drained, cannot be emptied." "I'm here," he inwardly spoke, uncertain. Without proper words, how could he bind the power? Cannot be bound. He thought of his power in the mouth of the Brecca. He'd believed then he had been drained of power, but his connection had remained. Cannot be drained. And now, here he lay with only a mere hint of the sky's presence within him. Cannot be emptied. What if this power they believed was controlled and manipulated by careful adherence to the laws of the Order really was a being? Sky, come! The thread within his chest burned with fresh fire. He opened his eyes and sucked in a full breath. Emilia and the commander traded blows, but the blows from the heavier club reverberated through Emilia's long pole. Please don't make me watch her fall. The heat thrummed within his chest, but it did not reach out to his injuries. He could feel it pushing outward, but hitting a barrier. The manacles. As always, the barest trickle moved through his body. Several more sentries had piled into the room, and Terran dropped to his knee. One hand held his gut, the other the knife he had pulled free. He pushed himself with obvious effort and held the short knife up. The group toyed with him now, taking turns prodding and taunting him with their long poles. Emilia clumsily deflected another blow and scrambled back, trying to regain her footing. The pole in her hand trembled, even as she set her jaw and steeled herself for the next attack. The sky. Not a mindless, elemental force, but a true deity. Nox had never paid much attention to the debates of the deeper theologies, but if she could hear him, maybe there was hope. Please, help me protect them. He pulled on his strength. Instead of flaring inside his own chest, he saw the muted glow within Terran's chest flash and expand. The warm light flooded through Terran's limbs, and he let out a whoop at the sensation. He rubbed at his belly with a grin as the wound healed. Terran reset and taunted the confused group. This is why you don't mess with the sky. A relieved smile cracked Nox's lips. Apparently there is more than one way to fight. He flared his pull on the sky's strength, and Terran burst alight with power.